The silence in the boutique was deafening. Adam stared at the invoice in his trembling hands. $47,000 for a single dress. Not just any dress, but the dress that Charlotte had declared absolutely essential for their wedding. The same wedding they'd agreed would be intimate, simple, meaningful. "This has to be a mistake," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Charlotte smoothed the silk of her chosen gown, refusing to meet his eyes in the boutique's ornate mirror. "It's not a mistake, Adam. This is what I want. We agreed on a budget of $15,000 for the entire wedding. This dress alone costs more than—" "Than what?" Charlotte finally turned, her perfectly sculpted face cold as marble. "Than your little teacher salary can handle? I told you from the beginning that I wanted something special. Something worthy of the Henderson name." The Henderson name. Always the Henderson name. Charlotte's father owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Portland, and she never let Adam forget it. What he'd once mistaken for confidence, he now recognized as entitlement wrapped in designer clothing. "Charlotte, we've been planning this wedding for 8 months. We chose the community center venue, the local florist, your aunt's catering. We agreed." "You agreed," she interrupted, examining her manicured nails. "I compromised. But I'm not walking down the aisle looking like some bargain bride. Either we do this right, or we don't do it at all." The ultimatum hung between them like a blade. Adam felt something fundamental shift in his chest, a tearing sensation that had nothing to do with heartbreak and everything to do with awakening. He thought of Rachel Miller, his teaching colleague who'd quietly helped him plan every detail of what was supposed to be their perfect day. Charlotte had been too busy with her charity luncheons and spa appointments to handle what she called tedious wedding logistics, leaving Adam to juggle venue visits between his teaching schedule. When he'd asked Rachel to help with the cake tasting because Charlotte was getting her nails done, she'd immediately said yes without asking why he was going alone. When Charlotte skipped the caterer meeting for a shopping trip, Rachel had driven across town with him, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. She'd listened to his anxieties about marriage with the patience of a saint, never once questioning why his fiancée wasn't the one having these conversations with him. Rachel, who'd been in love with him for 3 years, though she'd never said a word. "The wedding is in 2 weeks, Charlotte." "Then you better figure it out." She gathered her purse, the gesture dismissive. "I'm not marrying someone who can't provide the life I deserve. My dad always said I was just settling." The boutique owner, Mrs. Yamada, had discreetly retreated to the back room, but Adam could feel her discomfort radiating through the curtains. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to his bank account. His entire savings, money he'd been setting aside for a house down payment, wouldn't cover half of what Charlotte now demanded. "I need some air," he muttered, pushing through the boutique's front door onto the busy sidewalk. His fingers moved automatically to Rachel's contact. She answered on the first ring, as she always did. "Adam, how did the final fitting go?" He closed his eyes against the autumn sun. "Rachel, can you meet me at Pioneer Square? I need to talk to someone." "Of course. Give me 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, Adam sat on a bench watching pigeons fight over scattered breadcrumbs while Rachel approached with 2 coffee cups from the cart nearby. She handed him one without a word, settling beside him with the comfortable familiarity of someone who'd perfected the art of reading his moods. "The dress costs $47,000, he said finally. Rachel's cup paused halfway to her lips. "1,000. She wants to change everything. The venue, the catering, the flowers. She says what we planned isn't good enough for a Henderson wedding." "What did you say?" Adam turned to study Rachel's profile. Really study it, perhaps for the first time. She had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the sort of gentle beauty that grew more striking the longer you looked. She wore a simple blue sweater that brought out the color of her eyes, and her dark hair was pulled back in the practical style of someone who spent her days teaching 5th graders. "I realized I don't know who I'm marrying," he said quietly. Rachel sipped her coffee, choosing her words carefully. "Cold feet are normal, Adam. Everyone has doubts before. This isn't cold feet." He set down his cup, suddenly decisive. "Rachel, why did you help me plan this wedding?" The question caught her off guard. Color rose in her cheeks, and she looked away toward the food trucks lining the square. "You needed help. I'm your friend. Look at me. Reluctantly, she turned. Adam saw something in her expression that he'd been too blind, too selfish to notice before. It was there in the way she watched him, in her infinite patience with his problems, in the way she dropped everything whenever he needed support. "You love me," he said. It wasn't a question. Rachel's composure cracked just slightly. "Adam, don't." "How long?" She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, in a voice barely audible above the city noise, "Since the faculty Christmas party 3 years ago. When you helped me fix the broken projector and stayed after to help clean up while everyone else went to the bar. 3 years. 3 years of watching him plan a life with someone else, of supporting his relationship with Charlotte, of being everything Charlotte wasn't, loyal, selfless, genuine." Adam felt sick with the realization of his own blindness. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "Because you were happy. Or I thought you were." Rachel's voice was steady now, resigned. "And because good friends don't sabotage each other's relationships with selfish confessions." Adam reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the small velvet box that contained Charlotte's engagement ring. 3 carats, flawless cut, exactly what she demanded. He'd worked overtime for 6 months to afford it, skipping meals and canceling plans to save every possible dollar. "She doesn't want me, Rachel. She wants the idea of being married, the status, the lifestyle. She wants someone who can afford $47,000 dresses and country club memberships and whatever else comes next." "So what are you going to do?" Adam stood abruptly, the ring box clutched in his palm. "I'm going to stop being an idiot." The drive back to Charlotte's apartment took 15 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. Adam found her in her living room, surrounded by wedding magazines and fabric samples, orchestrating the demolition of their original plans with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. "Adam, perfect timing," she said without looking up from her phone. "I found a venue that can accommodate us if we're willing to pay the premium. It's only $30,000 for the space plus." "No." Charlotte's manicured finger paused mid-scroll. "Excuse me. I said no. No to the dress, no to the new venue, no to turning our wedding into some monument to your father's bank account." She set down her phone with deliberate precision. "Adam, we've discussed this. If you can't provide what I need, then maybe we're not right for each other." He pulled the ring box from his pocket. "Maybe we never were." For the first time in months, Charlotte looked genuinely surprised. "What are you doing?" "Something I should have done a long time ago." Adam opened the box, looking at the ring that had cost him everything he'd saved. Charlotte's eyes widened, probably assuming he was about to propose some grand gesture, some promise to give her everything she demanded. Instead, he snapped the box shut and slipped it back into his pocket. "You can keep the dress," he said quietly. "Consider it a breakup gift." Charlotte's composure shattered. "You can't be serious." "Adam, the invitations have been sent. People are expecting a wedding between 2 people who love each other. But that's not what this is it?" He moved toward the door, but Charlotte's voice stopped him. "If you walk out that door, don't come crawling back when you realize what you're giving up. I'm Charlotte Henderson. I could have married anyone." Adam turned back one last time. "You're right. You could have. But you chose someone who thought you were worth changing for." "I was wrong about that." Charlotte scoffed. "Sure, go ahead. I bet you would return back in a few hours and tell me to continue with our wedding preparations." Adam stared at her and nodded before stepping out of her apartment. Adam walked directly from Charlotte's apartment to the school where he knew Rachel would be staying late, grading papers in her classroom. He found her at her desk, classical music playing softly from her laptop. She looked up in surprise when he appeared in the doorway. "Adam, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be with Charlotte?" "I need you to come with me," he said quietly. "There's something I need to do." Rachel studied his face, recognizing something different in his expression. She saved her work without asking questions and followed him back to his car. The drive to Charlotte's apartment was silent. Adam parked outside the building and turned to Rachel. "I want you to see this," he said simply. "Didn't I tell you, you would return in a few hours? You were early." Charlotte cut off in mid-sentence, opening the door. Charlotte stood in front of them wearing a silk robe, her face mask still drying. Her expression shifted from surprise to annoyance when she saw Rachel standing beside Adam. "What is she doing here?" Charlotte demanded. "Rachel's here because she's been more involved in planning our wedding than you have," Adam said, his voice steady. "She's here because she deserves to witness what happens when someone finally chooses truth over comfort." Charlotte's eyes narrowed. "Adam, what are you talking about?" He pulled out the ring box, opening it to reveal the 3-carat diamond that had cost him everything. Charlotte's expression immediately softened, probably assuming he was about to apologize, to promise her the $47,000 dress and whatever else she demanded. Instead, Adam turned to Rachel. "Rachel Miller," he said, his voice carrying across the apartment hallway, "this ring was bought for the wrong person. It was bought by someone who was too blind to see what was right in front of him." Charlotte's face went white. "You wouldn't dare." "I'm doing this because you've been my best friend, my strongest supporter, my safe harbor for 3 years, Adam continued, taking Rachel's trembling hand. "I was too stupid to realize that's exactly what love looks like." He slipped the ring onto Rachel's finger right there in the hallway, with Charlotte watching in shocked silence. It fit perfectly, as if it had always belonged there. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," Charlotte finally managed, her voice shaking with rage. "No," Adam said, never taking his eyes off Rachel. "The biggest mistake was not doing this 3 years ago." Rachel looked down at the ring through her tears, then back up at Adam. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Rachel, 3 years ago at that Christmas party, do you know what I remember most?" She shook her head, aware that Charlotte was still standing in her doorway, witnessing everything. "I remember thinking that if I could find someone who laughed at my terrible jokes the way you did, someone who stayed to help clean up without being asked, someone who saw the best in a broken projector and a messy classroom. I remember thinking that person would be the luckiest find in the world." Adam stepped closer to Rachel, his voice gentle but clear enough for Charlotte to hear every word. "It just took me 3 years and one very expensive mistake to realize I'd already found her." Rachel's smile broke through her tears like sunrise after the longest night. "The ring is beautiful, but I would have said yes to a plastic one from a gumball machine." "I can't believe this," Charlotte said, her voice rising. "You're throwing away everything we built for your little teacher friend?" "Everything we built." Adam turned back to his former fiancée. "Charlotte, you couldn't even be bothered to show up for our own wedding planning. Rachel was there for every decision, every detail, every moment that mattered. She was building our wedding while you were getting manicures." Charlotte slammed her door so hard the sound echoed through the entire building. As Adam and Rachel walked back to his car, hand in hand, he felt something he'd never experienced with Charlotte despite all their grand plans and expensive gestures. He felt home. He felt peace. He felt like himself. The ring caught the light from the hallway fixtures, throwing tiny rainbows across the wall, a simple, perfect promise of all the ordinary, extraordinary days to come.